Jimmy Butler has spread his cancer all over the Heat, and he has ruined their season. I do believe they'll never recover from this disastrous guy that is, purged on them. I mean, he's ruined. Like, they don't matter anymore at all. Like, I watched them play last night. They sucked.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take.
Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity. I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
We welcome you to hour number 2 live right here on a Tuesday morning on the Early Line on SportsGrid. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. Yesterday, a Monday afternoon, chock full of introductory press conferences around the NFL. 4 new head coaches in 4 new locations introduced yesterday. Brian Schottenheimer in an emotional presser in Dallas. Aaron Glenn trying to fire everybody up with the New York Jets. Liam Cohen making his presence known in Jacksonville, and Pete Carroll there in Las Vegas. Now we go elsewhere around the NFL at this current moment. Patrick Graham, who served as the defensive coordinator for the Raiders this past season, also interviewed yesterday to be the new DC in Duval County to be on Liam Cohen's staff. Donnie, we talked about Liam Cohen and, of course, the funny soundbite where he got a little bit embarrassed yesterday around social media for what he said. But again, you said it. I will back it up. I think Liam Cohen spoke about that yesterday as well. There is a lot to be optimistic by in Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence, yes, he has struggled, but if fully healthy, he is the face of the franchise. There is talent on that roster. The one thing actively holding back the Jaguars was the GM, Trent Baalke, who Liam Cohen got fired to become the head coach in Jacksonville. I actually do believe the Jags are going to be a competitive roster moving forward into 2025.
Absolutely. Like, you had the spicy hire, right, in Urban Meyer. Didn't work out. So you had to resettle the franchise with Doug Peterson. And in the end, it didn't work out. Now you're going with the tactician on offense to take that team to the next level. So I like the progression that Jacksonville is showing, where it's like, okay, we really whiffed. We got to go safe. Now that we went safe, let's get back on the winning path and have one of these young up-and-coming coaches that hopefully it turns out that he could coach here 10 to 15 years if it goes right. There's a lot to be optimistic about if you're a Jaguars backer at this point. I'm not a backer of the Jaguars, but I like what's going on down there. I do.
I will be interested to see what the win total is, 8.5, 9.5, where the number floated around this offseason. Expecting a bounce back from the Jags after a disappointing end to 2023. Of course, it was not necessarily a successful 2024, but a competitive football team despite all of the really cards stacked against them to end out the year. Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, DRS. Art Rooney, the owner, speaking with the media at his year-end press conference and mainly had this to say about the quarterback room. He anticipates the Steelers signing either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, but likely not both. Ideally wants more than a one-year deal at QB. That from ESPN's Brooke Pryor. What do you think Pittsburgh does this offseason at the quarterback position?
Makes a mistake like they're going to do. I'm not saying Russell Wilson can be a capable quarterback. So can Justin Fields. With each one of those quarterbacks, you can probably be 500, which that's the new standard in Pittsburgh. It's no longer Super Bowls. It's can we keep Mike Tomlin's streak alive? Because the right thing to do with a healthy franchise is understand what you watched last year is what doesn't win in the NFL long-term playoff games, making runs to a Super Bowl. The quarterback play they had, but they go, winning record again? Bring Russ back, guarantees us 9 wins. Let's get after it next year. I feel Pittsburgh is not about this. They are about being one of the best run organizations in football for decades on decades here. And it seems like they lost their way where they sort of turned into, we owe it to our fan base to have winning records. No. This fan base expects world championships. That's the expectations that you sent over the past 40 to 50 years. I can't believe that they're going to make a mistake and bring back one or even both of those quarterbacks to be the quarterback to lead the Steelers next year. It's ridiculous.
In the Steel City, the floor is always very high, but the ceiling not much higher than that floor. Success can also be a hindrance, as weird as that might sound to say, because of the fact they just keep winning football games and making playoff appearances, but never really going further than to the divisional round. They're not having a disastrous or failure of a season to really build things back up from the ground level, to draft a quarterback, to focus on the future of the franchise. And that's why the Steelers are kind of in this weird limbo of winning ways, but not championship ways at the same time.
Like, look at that division. Like Lamar Jackson is going to go to the Hall of Fame. Joe Burrow is probably going to go to the Hall of Fame. Who knows what Cleveland's going to do? They're a mess as well. But the goal is not to say, let's make sure we stay ahead of Cleveland and just have that third place in that division and win more games than we lose here. Like, you have to go toe-to-toe. And honestly, the fan base would probably be so refreshed. Like, I'm not saying you fire Mike Tomlin. But if Tomlin goes, look, it hasn't worked out. We have a great defense. I understand that. We have to find our quarterback. And you would take 2 or 3 straight years of losing records to find that next Ben Roethlisberger? Come on now. They would take that in a heartbeat to get back to true Steelers football.
The Browns have been a dumpster fire despite all of the investment in Deshaun Watson. And yet, because of how bad things got in understanding their role, they'll draft second overall, trying to turn around their franchise in one offseason. The Baltimore Ravens, speaking of the AFC North, extending offensive coordinator Todd Monken. Zach Ertz, DRS, playing against his former team in Philadelphia in the NFC Championship, saying, hey, listen, I still got more in the tank. I'm not retiring. Wants to stay, of course, with the Commanders.
Yeah, Monken, good move. Stay in Baltimore there. That team's going to be fine next year. They'll be making a run in the AFC playoffs. You know that. But also, Zach Ertz, he said something really profound after they lost that game. He's like, you know what? Taking his Philadelphia years, we had great success and won a Super Bowl. But you can see when a guy's entering the end of his career as opposed to like, boy, if I was 22 years old coming into this league and I had Jaden Daniels as my quarterback, my goodness, the next 10 to 15 years would be so special. So he's sort of reliving knowing that it's coming to an end. But he's still got some things left in the tank. He was showing out even in a blowout loss in Philadelphia and had a very good year for the Commanders. I would be surprised, like, hey, you know what? We're going younger at tight end. It's clear that Jaden Daniels and him have a connection. Why not bring him back again?
Absolutely so. That safety valve that was targeted, I believe, 16 times on Sunday against Philadelphia. He went over every prop associated with his name. We'll talk more in buy or sell in our third hour together about the teams that were ousted from playoff consideration during championship weekend, the Bills and the Commanders, and a bright future in Landover for Jaden Daniels. But DRS, let's turn our attention now to the association. 12-game slate around the NBA yesterday. And you know my thoughts on how our producer extraordinaire, Joe Frizo, bills games at times. Finals preview, question mark. I think we use the term too often. But maybe Frizo was onto something. And Donnie, you certainly were as well. A prove-it litmus test type of game for the Rockets, entering last night's second-best record in the Western Conference. Could they keep pace against the reigning champs on the road in Beantown? The answer was absolutely yes. Houston wins outright, 114-112, as a 6 2.5-point underdog inside TD Garden. Amen Thompson is playing sensational basketball, a career best 33 points for the third-year guard for Houston, and the game-winning floater to give the Rockets the victory in the closing seconds. You see Dylan Brooks, 10 threes made last night. Houston wins a big one in Boston.
One of the NBA bad boys out there, Dylan Brooks, dropping 36 points on the road to lead the Rockets here. This is one of those teams where I talked about it yesterday, Ben, is that measuring stick game. You see the record for the Rockets. Yeah, they're good, but let me see how good you are going into Boston, home of the reigning NBA champions, and see how you hold up. Because quite frankly, if they would have lost by 2, 4, 6, say, you know what? That's pretty good, man. You can hang with Boston. But it's another thing to actually beat Boston in their own building. Yeah. I was so impressed by that. And again, just reading the lines yesterday, I thought Houston Rockets, even with that great record already, they were getting a lot of respect, only getting like 6.5 points at game time. Yeah. Great performance in an outright victory in Boston. I was impressed.
Jason Tatum struggled mightily, 5 of 14 from the floor, 1 of 7 from deep. Amen Thompson in his second year, my apologies, but still a career night. Again, the Rockets now, where they stand in the Western Conference, the second best record, 31-14. Houston is 9-4-1 against the spread as an underdog, 8-6 straight up. They are the only team of 30 in the association that has a winning record above 500 outright as an underdog this season. We'll talk more action around the association and some college basketball theatrics next on TEL.
One of the weirdest nicknames I've heard in fighting. You know, there's people have some strange nicknames at times, but the Lemon Killer. What do you even make of that? What is that about?
I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna squeeze him like a lemon on the day we fight, and he's gonna pop.
Only on SportsGrid.
We're going to get rid of all the badness, if you will, over the past few decades for the Raiders and set yourself up for the future. It's a horrible job to take if you expect to win, but it's not a bad paying gig, so go ahead and take it.
With an owner in Mark Davis who has continued to make bad decision after bad decision. Does Pete Carroll leave a culture behind that Joe Brady in 2 to 3 years takes over?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he is becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great TJ Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
We'll see if they get McCain back. Kelly Oubre, Yabusele's been good. Caleb Martin's a defensive specialist. Andre Drummond can still give you, almost a double-double at any point. I can't go south on this team. And now you're giving it to me at 2-1 to make the playoffs? To be in the Final 8? Folks, give me the Philadelphia 76ers to make the playoffs at plus 210.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
A very high-scoring affair at Madison Square Garden as we go around the association and through a 12-game slate from a Monday night in the NBA. DRS, we both looked at a total yesterday for a matchup between the New York Knicks and the Memphis Grizzlies, the two teams that sit in their respective 3-seed spots around each of their conferences at 241.5 for a Tom Thibodeau coach basketball team. And said to ourselves, come on, man, 241.5 for Tibbs? Turned out the odds makers had it spot on. 143, 106, the victory for the Knickerbockers. New York covers as a 3.5-point favorite at home against Memphis. Donnie's second consecutive game on Saturday for the Knicks, and last night against the Grizz, they scored at least 140 points. Offensive wagon now there at MSG for Tom Thibodeau and the Knicks.
Yeah, it took 108 shots from the floor yesterday. And the question was, come on, Tibbs, play some defense. They did. They allowed Memphis to score 106 points. That's really good defense. But 143 points in regulation, which included 42 in the third and 41 in the fourth quarter, is an absolute blowout winner, in which John Morant was a minus 41 in that ball game. As one of the better players in the NBA to not show up, that's crazy. Usually teams get excited. Hey, Memphis, you're going to the Garden. Hey, man, it's one of those games we circle. It's always big, playing in the Mecca of basketball. Apparently it wasn't last night. Maybe hitting the after party or the pregame party. What the heck were the Memphis Grizzlies doing?
Both teams 31-16 right now. 2 of 6 teams around the NBA with at least 30 wins this year. That would be New York, Memphis, Houston, Boston, who we showed you, and of course OKC and Cleveland. The Cavaliers blowing out the Pistons at home last night. The Knicks now this year 22-19-1 against the spread as the favorite side. They've gone over in 6 of their last 9 games. Memphis, third highest over percentage in the NBA. Why that total was north of 240. 30 of 47 games now for the Grizz, better than 63%. Yesterday in Phoenix, an interesting line. The Clippers were a slight road favorite in the Valley against the Suns, but as Donnie said, it seemed as though Phoenix would be at full strength. Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Bradley Beal, all listed as playing, and all did play. Bradley Beal off the bench, 33 minutes, only 9 points, but still enough to give the Suns a victory. 111-109 outright at home against the LA Clippers. But the real story, DRS, Norm Powell, 3 made threes, 24 points, rinse, wash, repeat.
Yep. How do you lose a basketball game when you got Norm Powell's plus 15? Let the guy play the whole game, and you would win it by 15 points, according to those statistics. But obviously, we know how the NBA operates. And also, how about this Phoenix? Only 8 total players played in that game. The starting 5 and 3 players off of the bench. It's a nice victory for them as they sort of wait for the next shoe to drop. Is it going to be Jimmy Butler to town? Is Bradley Beal on his way out? So it was a quality victory, but it is just nice to see. The Clippers, even though 26-20, we haven't got this full tilt team yet here. Kawhi Leonard, Derek Jones Jr., Zubac, Harden, and Powell. That's a nice starting 5 if they can stay healthy and still just compete for the rest of the way, build up towards the playoffs. That's certainly a team to watch at that point. And again, you're right. Norm Powell making 3 3-point shots. Right as rain, baby. Just ride Norm Powell the rest of the way.
23 points for Norm last night, but a bunch of double-doubles in that starting lineup. Harden, 24 and 10. Ivica Zubac, 25 points and 16 boards as well. It was that bench for Phoenix, not necessarily Bradley Beal, but Grayson Allen pouring in 18 points. That was the difference for Phoenix last night. They've won 8 of their last 11. Now a couple of games above 500, 24 and 21, 26 and 20, the mark for the LA Clippers, 6 games above 500 this season. The Suns still the worst cover team in the NBA, despite doing so last night, 16, 28 and 1 ATS. Will more help be on the way? That we shall see. A couple of other notes from last night around the association. No Jimmy Butler now for Miami. They won in double overtime in the Sunshine State battle against the Orlando Magic, 125-119. The Lakers went on the road in Charlotte, 112-107. Peculiar game in Chicago. The Bulls beat the Nuggets, 129-121. And we did have Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Jamal Murray all out there for Denver. Aaron Gordon, also off the bench as well. Big win for the Bulls.
Yeah, nice win for the Bulls, 129-120. As we wait to see where Zach LaVine actually could wind up here in a trade if it turns out. But you are looking at Nikola Jokic. It's unfair we do this. Yes, they lost, but 33, 14, and 12. Every single night feels like a triple-double from the big guy. And it's we just don't know if he should be in that MVP race where he can win it once again. Very good win for the Bulls, surprising the Nuggets lost. But my focus every night is the appreciation for Nikola Jokic, where he's not the biggest, he's not the fastest, but every night he dominates. Every night he dominates.
Yes, he certainly does. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, still the MVP favorite, and in pretty hefty minus money at this stage of a season, minus 350. Nikola Jokic at plus 230. He's won 3 of the last 4. He's one of 9 players ever in NBA history with 3 MVP awards. You got to think that's the reason why he's not closer. It's also become the expectation that he averages basically a triple-double and leads the NBA in all of those categories in points, in rebounds, and assists. I don't know if he necessarily does at this moment. Also, you saw Matas Buzelis, the 10th overall pick for Chicago last night, 9 points off the bench. He is going to be in that dunk contest. Again, I learned yesterday. They call him Little Boozy Vert. Love that. Just thought I'd make a point once again.
That's a good one. Yeah, it is a good one there. Maybe get a little excitement there. Are we excited, by the way, for the dunk competition? We excited this year? What do you think?
You know what they would do if Commissioner Rightside and Stevens were taking over the NBA dunk contest? You know who we would put in there?
Who? Who you got?
You know. Think about it. Mac McClung is an inspiration.
Cooper DeJean? Yeah,
I'm sure that everybody has seen Cooper DeJean's high school highlights back in his days in Odebolt, Iowa. The man can get up. Now, you want to get excited by somebody dunking a basketball? That's that.
How about a crossover here that we've seen in the NBA? Like, hey, we're going to shoot 3-point shots. You get to shoot from the female line. I got to shoot from the men's line. How about this? 10-foot rims for the men, 8 for the women. Dunk off here. How about it? Caitlin Clark, 360 windmills on an 8-foot rim. Come on now. Come on.
Also be kind of sick. I like where you're thinking. Commissioner Rightside. Innovative and outside of the box.
Innovative.
Always.
And
College
fashionable.
basketball next.
One of the weirdest nicknames I've heard in fighting. You know, there's people have some strange nicknames at times, but the Lemon Killer. What do you even make of that? What is that about?
I don't even know what that means, but I'm gonna squeeze him like a lemon on the day we fight, and he's gonna pop.
Only on SportsGrid.
We're going to get rid of all the badness, if you will, over the past few decades for the Raiders and set yourself up for the future. It's a horrible job to take if you expect to win, but it's not a bad paying gig, so go ahead and take it.
With an owner in Mark Davis who has continued to make bad decision after bad decision. Does Pete Carroll leave a culture behind that Joe Brady in 2 to 3 years takes over?
The Early Line. Only on SportsGrid.
He did nothing for 5 weeks. So he's becoming his brother. So I don't want to hear about how great TJ Watt is with his 0 playoff wins. And he's the first guy to admit it. He comes right out and says, I've never won a playoff game. I don't matter. All right, at least we all know who the best player on the team is. It's George Pickens. If you don't believe that, well, then screw you too.
Pharrell, Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid.
We'll see if they get McCain back. Kelly Oubre, Yabusele's been good. Caleb Martin's a defensive specialist. Andre Drummond can still give you, almost a double-double at any point. I can't go south on this team. And now you're giving it to me at 2-1 to make the playoffs? To be in the Final 8? Folks, give me the Philadelphia 76ers to make the playoffs at plus 210.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
What a wild Monday night in college basketball. The madness does not wait until March. Make sure you are here in late January. Donnie Rightside now is. I can guarantee you that. In DRS yesterday, a Big 12 battle in Tucson. Number 3, Iowa State, having a historic season for the program. On the road, taking on Arizona. Always be wary of the unranked home favorite against the ranked opposition. certainly if that team is ranked third in the nation. The Cats were laying 2.5 points yesterday against the Cyclones, a total of 152.5. But it did seem as though the Clones would pull off the outright upset as the underdog late in regulation, up 71-68 after a made free throw. Caleb Love, with 2 seconds left, catches the basketball, and from about 65 feet away, beyond half court, bang, a three-pointer to send the game into overtime. And in that extra session, Arizona prevails 86-75. It took a while, but they do cover as a 2.5-point home favorite in a game that lived up to the billing last night in Tucson.
Absolutely exciting here. 8-1 in conference play, the Wildcats. 7-2 in conference play, Iowa State. You're outside of Hilton, still expected to win that basketball game, even though you are underdogs, and you had that game dead to rights at the end, and you let it slip away, and sometimes you just can't stop the momentum. But we talk about in the NBA a lot, like, hey, man, you got some really good bench play. You don't see that a lot in college basketball. Usually the bench guy comes in, gives you 10 good 15 minutes, gets a couple rebounds, uses a couple fouls, maybe a few points. Did you see Bryant and Lewis off the bench yesterday? 14 points apiece, combining for 28 points off the bench. That's a great surge here. You don't see that all that much in college basketball. Case in point for Iowa State. 0 points out of one player, 5 out of one, and 2 out of the other. You're getting 28 total points off the bench from 2 players here. That's impressive.
Carter Bryant, the freshman from Riverside, 14 points. KJ Lewis, 14 as well. And whatever you do in life, I hope you walk into it with as much confidence as Caleb Love continues to have in his basketball abilities. 8 of 22 last night, 4 of 13 from deep, but one of those 4 made triples was from beyond half court, about 70 feet away, to end out regulation, to send the game to overtime. Caleb Love continues to be exactly that. Caleb Love. Arizona 4-5 to start this year. The Cats under Tommy Lloyd have now won 10 of their last 11. They have covered in 8 of those 10 victories, as Donnie alluded to. 8-1 in the Big 12, a costly loss for TJ Otzelberger and Iowa State. They fall a full 2 games behind Houston. The Cougars undefeated so far in Big 12 play at the top of the conference. You will see Houston and Iowa State tied for the third best number to win a national championship at 9-1. We'll talk Duke in just a moment, but the Blue Devils co-favorites alongside Auburn at plus 430. Janai Broome now back for the Tigers. DRS, I understand why Duke has one of the 2 shortest prices to win a national championship. I still think if you were going to bet any of the favorites, Auburn is the best value on the board.
It seems like it, too, because sometimes you try to analyze. It's not as if, yes, if you run through the ACC, you get a number 1 seed, that's fine. And path to victory is usually easier than a 2, 3, or a 4. I get that. But you also like to see the battle-tested marks that you get in the SEC and the Big 12. The ACC is a very down conference. That's no knock on Duke, but usually like to see, like, you know what, build up those scars on the road, take some of those losses, see how you rebound, because in the NCAA tournament, you only get 1 bad game. And if you have it, you're out of the tournament altogether. Yeah. So that's what I'm looking forward to the rest of the way for Duke. Not knocking them. Very good team. Talented. Will be a 1 seed. Enough, let's just say, talent to win a national championship. Absolutely. But for me, it's just a shame because usually the ACC is a war of attrition, and it's not that way this year.
It's now the SEC. 10 of the top 25 teams in the AP poll released yesterday afternoon. And also just some news for Florida. Of course, their head coach, Todd Golden, in the news earlier this year. A Title IX investigation done by the university into some potential harassment on campus. Those claims dismissed yesterday with no evidence. Florida top 5 in the country. Other scores for Monday night. Duke, a 21.5-point favorite, DRS, inside Cameron Indoor against NC State. Sub 500 this year, despite being a Final Four team, of course, in the Cinderella run a season ago. Was trailing at the half. They had to rally in the second, led by Cooper Flagg, 23 of his 28 last night. In that second half, Duke still wins by double digits. They're perfect 10-0 in the ACC.
Yes, and also understand this. If you are one of those bettors that placed a pregame bet on Duke, like, it didn't work out well, but if you waited until they were down double digits in the first 10 minutes, probably won that ticket here moving forward. That's the way to do it.
I bet Duke laying 8.5 at the half, down by 3. Cash that ticket. We'll talk the NFL. It's Super Bowl odds next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Anyone that's been to a sporting event, the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Is it just a matter of his contract, his age? I mean, usually things like this get fixed pretty quickly, but this one is not fixed, and now it's just super uncomfortable.
The opportunity or the idea of getting another team involved adds more complication to the situation, and it doesn't seem like a resolution is anywhere in sight, but the more suspensions come in, the more it's clear that the saga is over, or his time there is over.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
"12 days away from Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans between the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. So over the buildup to Super Bowl 59 in the biggest game of each and every NFL season, we are going to attack the game from every single angle, including what market movement we might see for the spread, the money line, the total from where we are right now at open to where we will be 12 days away on Sunday, February 9th in New Orleans, Louisiana. DRS, it's time to play Guess the Line. And, of course, we start with the spread, where it opened and where it is right now. 1.5 in favor of Kansas City. Where will it be on February 9th? I'm sorry, who's that? Is that like a generic Chiefs person? Just to understand what we have on
it
the
is
screen.
A generic guy. The guy doesn't play or make money for
Hopkins?
anybody who bets on him. Yeah, it is a generic guy. Yep, that is him.
Generic.
Mm-hmm.
I can't.
Yeah.
I also didn't hear
it's
anything
generic because the guy,
our studio
the guy
equipment's working well today.
Yeah, the guy doesn't make anybody money who bets on him, so he is generic.
Yeah,
yes,
for sure.
So
it is generic. DeAndre Hopkins there on the right side of that screen. Anyway, Guess the line where it is right now. 1.5 in favor of Kansas City. We are not talking money line just yet. The spread, DRS. Where do you think the closing number will be as we get to kick on February 9th in the Big Easy?
I'm going to say it stays in the 1 range, which means 1.5 to 1. I don't think it flips to a favorite towards the Philadelphia Eagles at -1 either. I don't think it gets to 2 or 2.5 because the information that's going to come out from today until Super Bowl Sunday, right? Sometimes you have to analyze that. If you just look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, 53% of the bets coming in on Kansas City, 58% of the money. That's roughly even. That's not enough to push it around depending on where sharps and squares are coming in on just yet here. But that number will start to change. Why? Because I do think some information that Kansas City, completely healthy ball club. Like, what are you expecting? Like, outside of somebody got hurt on Kansas City in practice, you're not anticipating any changes here. The one thing I do think people will buy into the Philadelphia Eagles on a point is, okay, Cam Jurgens, who didn't play in the last game, says he's going to be fine. Just some back spasms built up during the week, couldn't shake him. I'll be fine Super Bowl Sunday. Then Landon Dickerson goes back to guard, and he has a week and a half to 2 weeks to heal up on that knee. So they'll be full go. Saquon Barkley, who shot out of a cannon in the playoffs. Why, Ben? because he didn't have to play week 18 against the New York Giants. Now he gets 2 weeks off to be extra ready. And also, where were the question marks on Sunday afternoon with the Philadelphia Eagles? Yeah, we were focused on the offensive line, but the talk all week was, boy, can Jalen Hurts even stand in the pocket or be functional? He looked functional and has 2 extra weeks to prepare to get ready for this game and rest that knee. So the reason I'm getting down to is the positives coming out aren't going to come from Kansas City other than, yeah, we know Andy Reid off a bye week, Patrick Mahomes is great, and that's fine. But now you're saying, boy, the Eagles hung 55 and looked really good on their playoff run, and they're going to get even fresher and healthier before they take on the Kansas City Chiefs. That's why I don't think it's going to 2. And if I had to say, just give me an answer point blank, I'll say -1 Chiefs on Super Bowl Sunday.
I don't think this line is going to move. Maybe it's foolish.
Yeah.
Maybe it's naive.
Yeah.
I believe Kansas City will be a 1.5 favorite by the time we get to kick on February 9th around 6:30 p.m. Eastern time to start Super Bowl 59. Here is why. I don't think the odds makers want the Chiefs as the underdog at all, because then you would get a slew of Chiefs money, probably from sharps, but also from the public bettor who, as much as they hate Kansas City, would say, how can you bet against the Chiefs as an underdog in yet another Super Bowl? I don't think the Chiefs will ever be listed as a dog for Super Bowl 59. They were the 2.5-point underdog for Super Bowl 57 against Philadelphia, but that was a different time. The Chiefs had not started their 2 consecutive streak of winning a Lombardi trophy. That line actually opened very briefly in favor of KC and quickly flipped in the a couple of minutes span to Philadelphia as the favorite. But here is where I think we see the most movement, and we already are starting to see it, DRS. That is the money line. It was -130 when I saw these numbers right after the AFC Championship game on the FanDuel Sportsbook on Sunday night. A -130 money line number in favor of KC. When we were discussing the early odds yesterday, -132. A little bit of movement, -124 now in favor of the Chiefs. You guys are talking about a couple of pennies. We understand that, but that would be the movement. And in a game that is expected to have this tight of a margin, it is noteworthy. Another thing that the FanDuel Sportsbook is great at doing, DRS, when you click on stats, it provides where the money is coming. Not in the consensus marketplace, but just on FanDuel. At open, more than 60% of both the money on the spread and the percentage of spread bets, just in terms of that, on Kansas City. Those numbers starting to dwindle. 58% of the money on the spread backing KC. Only 53% of the bets on the spread now backing the Chiefs, which shows me people early starting to bet on the Eagles. Maybe they believe they have an edge with the Birds, or just the idea, DRS, somebody other than Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Chiefs need to win a Lombardi trophy, and that's why we're seeing some early movement in the money line, because that's where I believe the odds makers are willing to move the market at the moment.
Yes, and we're going to analyze this repeatedly right up till next Sunday here and say, why are you guys talking about cents on the money line here? Because that is a big difference. We're now isolating one football game with 50 times the amount of eyeballs, money, tickets, you name it here. So this is the one game. If you would pick out, Ben, one game, and I know Monday Night Football is big, Thursday Night Football is big, standalone football Sunday night, we get that. But when you look at the Super Bowl, everybody gets involved in it now. And it's no longer like in the back rooms, like, hey, Sharp Joe down the street in his corner book has this. Like, no, this is the FanDuel Sportsbook. Legalized gambling in the United States, where you get to actually get a window into where the money is going and how much is changing right in front of your eyes. And this is the one game that you would look toward to say, where is the public actually going? Where are the moms, the dads, the part-time gamblers just have to get involved? Where is that money going? Is it just, it's Patrick Mahomes and only laying 1.5 points, you just have to win? Or is it, no, the Eagles actually have a better overall football team, man for man, than the Kansas City Chiefs do? That's what we're going to analyze and see where it goes. So we are looking at 58%, as you said, the percentage of the money with the spread on the Kansas City Chiefs, and then just the spread tickets themselves without the money at 53%. I think it's going to be more around that 50-50 type split once we get to Super Bowl Sunday, but we never know where the public's going to come in late because we're in that lull pattern, Ben, this week, right? You have the hits as soon as you see the lines, you have the fervor on a Monday, then it sort of settles in. Then Super Bowl week starts to creep in. Then Thursday and Friday, that's when the big boys start to fly in and the $1 million wagers go left and right in. Who's betting what? So keep an eye on that. But we're in that lull period right now, just having fun seeing where these lines sit.
Super well said. If there was movement, it happened late on Sunday evening and on Monday morning. We are probably not going to see this line, even the money line, move all that much in the next 7-8 days. But then you get to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, entering the weekend. Everybody, public better, sharp better, big better, small better, they start to come in and look at those Super Bowl numbers. What is it going to do to the number then? That remains to be seen. But, Donnie, I guess we're being slightly boring in our first guess the line in terms of the spread. Still expected to be 1.5 in favor of Kansas City.
I'll change my pick.
I believe the Chiefs. What?
You want me to change my pick for you, Ben, to make it exciting? Eagles -6.5 on Super Bowl Sunday. There, I said it. How about that? Stamp that. Approval.
Really good stuff. Would you lay it?
Of course. Alt it. Somebody on this network always says alt it. I don't know who that guy is, but sounds like maybe an alt opportunity here on the Philadelphia Eagles in this game. How about that?
The human algo has already received some information based on what that one named individual might do there in New Orleans. Again, I believe the Chiefs will remain the favorite for Super Bowl 59. And again, if it sounds silly to discuss a couple of cents on the money line, think about our last two games that were basically a pick'em in the AFC. Buffalo, Baltimore, game decided by 2, 27-25. KC, Buffalo, game decided by 3, down to the closing moments once again. How about the total for Super Bowl 59? Next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Is it just a matter of his contract, his age? I mean, usually things like this get fixed pretty quickly, but this one is not fixed, and now it's just super uncomfortable.
The opportunity or the idea of getting another team involved adds more complication to the situation, and it doesn't seem like a resolution is anywhere in sight, but the more suspensions come in, the more it's clear that the saga is over, or his time there is over.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results.
What? How do you do this one?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Guess the Line continues early, 12 days out from Super Bowl Sunday and Super Bowl 59. It's the Chiefs, it's the Eagles. two dominant defenses all season long around the National Football League, but a ton of star power on the offensive side as well. So what does that do for the thought on the total? 49.5 is that number currently. Where will it be on Super Bowl Sunday, 12 days away, February 9th? DRS, 49.5 right now. Where will it be in just about 2 weeks?
Sharp side, Donnie says that number probably should be at 48.5 come game time here. Two really good defenses, big stage, 2 weeks to prepare. Obviously the offense gets the 2 weeks together, but we're talking about two really good defenses in the upper echelon of the NFL this season. But also I understand this is a public game that they're going to come in and say, hold on now. You see what the Philadelphia Eagles can do on offense? It's Patrick Mahomes on the other side. I just watched the NFC Championship game. 55 points for one side, cruising like around 80 points. And then I also watched the AFC game in colder temperatures, end up with one team with 32, the other team with 29 points. And we're supposed to expect that these two teams with explosive players all over the place, world championship quarterbacks, great, obviously offensive minds, and think this game in a dome is going to stay under 50 points. Yeah, 50.5. So I'm going to say, if I had to put my money on it right now, where this line is going, I'm still going to stick with under the 49.5, which means 49 or below. But I can't push forward next week when everybody is going to get so excited and bet this bad boy into the 50s. But I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to say this line goes lower than the 49.5 when it's all said and done on Super Bowl Sunday.
I completely agree. I think the closing number is going to be 48.5. Yeah. The under already has the juice, minus 115. If you want to go under 49 and a hook, minus 105 to the over. Is it monumental juice? Is it drastic? No, not in terms of the VIG just yet. But I do believe this number is going to work down and close at 48.5. That does not mean I believe it is the right side. Donnie, we talked about this yesterday. When you look at the team totals, 25.5 for KC, 23.5 currently for Philadelphia. I think both teams are going to flirt with that number, which means the margin of keeping this game under is not all that large and would certainly be a sweat. Two great defenses, but two astounding offenses as well, although the Chiefs have not been overwhelmingly successful offensively. But they still scored 32 against Buffalo. The Bills are not the defense that Philadelphia is. I understand that. I do think the number closes at 48.5. I don't necessarily believe, though, that the market movement will have that correct. I still think we see some points in Super Bowl 59.
Yes, me too. And also, I'm just scrolling down here on the FanDuel Sportsbook, trying to find where the, there we go. Eagles team total, 24.5. Kansas City team total, 24.5. So the question always comes out is, can you put yourself in a realm where it's like, okay, we have a legitimate chance at this, which means I would be shocked if we come Super Bowl Sunday and see that final score with one of these teams, or both of them, let's just say, in the teens. Both of these teams are going to move the football regardless of how good those defenses are. Both will be aggressive on fourth downs, trying to trade 3 for 7 points. So if you said, I'm going to tell you right now, I don't know the scores, but both of these teams will at least be 20 points or above, you got to take the over at that point. So that's generally where I lean, even though we've seen Super Bowls and teams pressing and bad turnovers and two great defenses where it's like, hey, 24-21 is a legitimate final score in the Super Bowl. 27-21, which right now would still have you on the under. That's a legitimate score here. So just because they both get into the 20s doesn't mean they get the over. But if you're saying just percentage-wise, I'm going to tell you right now, both of these teams at least 20 or more, you got to take the over at that point, right?
And yesterday that moved. 25.5 was the number for KC. Yeah. The under had the juice. 23.5, of course, a key number for Philadelphia. The over had the juice. Both now at 24.5, which should tell us a few things. The total is working down ever so slightly because the Chiefs have even money on 24 and a hook, and the Eagles have the juice on the under, but also how close this game is expected to be if both teams have the same exact point total for a Super Bowl. 5 of the last 6 Super Bowls have stayed under, just so you know. All right, DRS, let's talk some of the players on the offensive side of the football that will directly impact how much offense and how much scoring we see come 12 days from now, including the NFL's best running back having a historic and record-setting season. That would be Saquon Barkley. His number at the moment is 112 and a hook. What will Saquon's number be come his very first Super Bowl 12 days from now in the Big Easy?
It's going over the 112.5. I honestly think this might line up at 115.5 to 118.5 in that range. The reason I say that, too, is because this line is going to get pushed around. And it's the same, like he had 115 yards and didn't hit his total in the last game. Now, granted, did you need him to get the extra yards at the end of the game? No. And Dallas Goedert was getting handoffs and Will Shipley was getting handoffs, which he probably could have easily got through the 115. But the one thing we do know is Saquon probably, if the game script is correct, will get 20 carries in this game. Is there a sane, I don't care about good of the Chiefs defense. Is there a sane person that says if I can guarantee Saquon with 20 carries, he's not going through 112.5? And I know that's not the question. This is just the way I'm answering it and playing it out. No, he is going to hit a home run. He is going to have a 30-yard plus run. He is going to be involved in this football game. This game is priced at a -1.5, which we're expecting, Ben, to be within one possession in the fourth quarter where Saquon's going to get carries. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter all the way through. I don't think there's anybody out there now, sharp, non-sharp public, is going like, you know what? I'm going to take that under 112 now. You're going to wait on that number and go, you know what? I might not bet it. But if it does go 115.5, 118.5, 120.5, now you take the under. There is no value to me on 112.5. It only is going to go higher for me, Ben.
Completely agree. I would guess the line and move this thing up to 114.5, 115 and a hook by the time we play in Super Bowl 59. Saquon's number for the NFC Championship game, 125.5. The Chiefs are so much better up front than that of the Commanders. But James Cook still had 13 carries for 85 yards and 2 touchdowns. Saquon's number right now, rushing plus receiving, 130.5. Kind of like that number at this moment. If I believe the rushing yards prop is going to go up and you add in the receiving game for Saquon Barkley as well. Quickly go.
One thing, too, Kenneth Gainwell, concussion. If he's not cleared, you're right. More passes for Saquon.
We'll talk to quarterbacks up next as we continue to guess the line on the early line.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Is it just a matter of his contract, his age? I mean, usually things like this get fixed pretty quickly, but this one is not fixed, and now it's just super uncomfortable.
The opportunity or the idea of getting another team involved adds more complication to the situation, and it doesn't seem like a resolution is anywhere in sight, but the more suspensions come in, the more it's clear that the saga is over, or his time there is over.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
The two guys that can do it all.
Too much electricity this morning.
This is a good time. We're having a lot of fun.
I had to do a triple take. Ka-ching! Why? Because of parity.
I didn't mean to offend.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
Load management is a dirty word.
Let him rip.
You know what? Circumstances provide the results. What?
How do you do this once?
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there.
A network that is booming.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
So we were just discussing Saquon Barkley. His rushing yards prop at the moment is 112 and a hook. Where will the number be 12 days from this very moment on Super Bowl Sunday in New Orleans? Both Donnie and I believe that will be on the rise. 114 and a half, 115 and a half, maybe even higher if there is the public love behind that number, and expecting another big play or two from Saquon Barkley against the Chiefs defensively. But it should be noted at this moment, we'll talk Patrick Mahomes in just a second. Jalen Hurts' rushing yards prop is 40 and a half. It was 31 and a half for the NFC Championship game because of the uncertainty around that left knee injury. And Hurts was not exactly mobile despite scoring 3 rushing touchdowns, 10 overall carries for just 16 total yards. But what the long layoff of Super Bowl preparation can do, Donnie, expecting him to be as close to 100% as you could hope for, and of course more active in terms of utilizing his own legs come Super Bowl Sunday.
And what do we like about Kansas City's defense? It's good. So normally you say to yourself, like, wait, I don't want to bet any quarterback props against a really good defense. Well, we'll talk about Patrick Mahomes against a good defense in just a few moments. But from a running perspective, you know what Spags does. His job is to generate pressure. And if you have a mobile quarterback and the pressure gets home and you can get out of it, there are running yards that you can pick up. So, Ben, you are astute there by saying we haven't seen the best of Jalen Hurts. And think of this. He only had 16 yards. Keep in mind, he had about, 15, 20-yard rushing touchdown that got called back. But the fact that wasn't what I was looking at. The 10 carries on a leg that maybe thought wasn't as good. So we can anticipate, Ben, if I told you right now, Jalen Hurts will get 10 carries in the Super Bowl. Some might come on kneel down, some on tush pushes. You would take the over 39.5 to 40.5 every single day of the week because you're factoring one of those runs is probably at least 10 to 15 yards.
28 and a half is the rushing yards prop for Patrick Mahomes, a number that he continues to just fly over. Had 10 carries in the AFC Championship game for 46 yards and multiple scores. But the passing yards prop is where we go with Patrick. Currently at 251 and a half and a little bit shy of 2 weeks, DRS. What is this number by the time they kick in New Orleans for Super Bowl 59?
255 and a half. I'm going to the over. Now, if your game script is Kansas City wins this game, it still should be going over 255 and a half. If your game script is in the fourth quarter, Kansas City is losing, it still should be going 255 and a half or over. Because understand this. In the past, maybe we're looking at Kansas City's offense being more like, hey, you know what? They can be efficient on the ground, which they can be, but they're not explosive on the ground anymore. Isaiah Pacheco is a really hard runner, and you thought maybe the trajectory of his career, or at least early on, was, man, this guy can break long runs. He can carry 15, 16 times, 70, 80 yards on the ground. That's no longer the case. Kareem Hunt has done a fine job as a veteran backup, but he's no longer that young, explosive guy that we saw come on the scene originally with Kansas City. So my game script is always Patrick Mahomes to win this football game for Kansas City is not handing it off, Ben, and having 177 yards and 1 touchdown and no interceptions. Patrick Mahomes has to be the Patrick Mahomes we know and love in the Super Bowl, which means the 251 and a half for me, that betting public is going to see that and be like, regardless of game script, it's going to have to be on Patrick Mahomes' shoulder to win this game. I'm going 255 and a half as that closing number on Super Bowl Sunday.
I'll go up a little bit. 253 and a half is my number. I don't believe we're going to see many props drop in the next 2 weeks or so, especially on those star players. And I think that number is very, very fair for Patrick Mahomes. Donnie, you know that my favorite yardage bet for conference championship weekend was Patrick Mahomes over 249 and a half. The number closed at 258 and a hook for Patrick Mahomes. He came up short, only 245 against Buffalo. And we talked about how illustrious his numbers have been in the AFC Championship game. One of the great things about Mahomes and the Chiefs about to play in their 5th Super Bowl in the last 6 years is you have such a sample size on one guy in a specific scenario in the biggest football game of a season. Last year, 333 yards against San Francisco, against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2020. He had 270 yards, but a couple of interceptions. Against the 49ers in his first Super Bowl, 286. What was the one Super Bowl I left out? 182 yards and 3 touchdowns against Philadelphia. So maybe not all that prolific through the air, but very efficient. 3 touchdowns, 21 of 27. I still think he flirts with the number. I don't know if I'll feel as confident in betting the over as I did for the Chiefs in the AFC title game.
The only thing I'm worried about, Ben, the over-under on the NFL coming in and be like, you know what? We don't like this turf inside the Superdome. Let's bring a brand new turf in here that's nobody's ever used before and have the Eagles on ice skates to give Mr. Mahomes another chance at victory. That's the only over. I want the under on that. Give me a clean surface, which we should have. Right. Let's get revenge. Let's get revenge, people.
This is the theme for Philadelphia. Hour 3 next.